He is one of the best in the business that I have great respect for and have for a long time, and that is Mark Brennen, 247 Sports. Mark, welcome back. It is so great to have you on again.
It's great to be here, Steve, and the check is in the mail for that nice comment. I appreciate it.
You earned over the years, you know that. Mark, before I get to Penn State, the predominant story, of course, in college football has been about Michigan. And this is really every day it seems like something new comes out. What is your read on what is happening there or what could happen there?
I look at it from a different perspective. For people who don't realize, my really sole focus is covering Penn State football. That's kind of what we do. And from my perspective, I just think this is terrible for the Big Ten. I don't see this ending well for the Big Ten at all because you have 3 power teams in the Big Ten. And I think you need all of them to be at the very absolute top of their game. And if this takes away from Michigan in any regard, I just think it's bad for the conference. I mean, if you're Penn State, you weren't able to beat Ohio State, you want Michigan at its very best. And, I don't know what sanctions could possibly come down or what could possibly happen, but I think when you have a Big Ten that is so top-heavy, you look at the college football playoff rankings that come out, and for something like this to happen to one of the big 3, I just don't think is a good thing for the conference. And I know people may be saying, well, what do you care about the conference? This looks like there could be cheating involved, and that's all fine and dandy. But if you're in Penn State shoes or if you're in Ohio State shoes, you want Michigan to be as good as they can be. So if you have an opportunity to beat them, that's going to boost you that much higher. So I know that's a little different than a lot of people may look at that. But I just think for the Big Ten, this is just an absolute terrible look. And I don't know that anything could happen by the time the Big Ten title game gets here or by the time the college football playoff things are announced. But I just think all this distraction at Michigan isn't a good thing for the conference in general.
All right, now that aside, let's get to Penn State. 7-1, won the game Saturday, 33-24. Everyone concedes, obviously, not Penn State's best game. What did you see pro and con in that game?
I think pro, obviously, is the way certain people bounce back in that game. I've been a little bit tough on Keandre Lambert-Smith all year. Early in the season, he had some 15-yard penalties that were really uncalled for. Really early in the preseason, we saw him getting after it with somebody in practice. These aren't things that you expect from a leader. And he absolutely has to be a leader. So what I liked in that game, Steve, is he had a play where he was open down the middle of the field and dropped the ball.
Right.
And guess what? He bounced back and ends up having one of his best games and ends up making a clutch play when it matters. To me, that's the development of a player as a leader. That's a guy saying, you know what, this team is struggling, this offense is struggling, I just messed up, I'm flushing it, I'm putting that in the rearview mirror, and I'm going to step up and I'm going to make a play. And I think when we look back on Keandre Lambert-Smith's career, obviously there were some big things that happened late last season, and his performance in the Rose Bowl, that was just undeniable how unbelievable that was. But I think what he did in that game, and that really stood out to me. And then obviously I think it goes without saying, listen, I've heard people say, maybe it was a good thing Drew Aller threw an interception. No, it was not a good thing that Drew Aller threw an interception. Right. That's ridiculous. I mean, who says that? But what was a good thing is the way he bounced back after throwing the interception. So you never want to see a player throw an interception. I mean, that makes no sense whatsoever. But the fact that he came back and played with confidence, we know how emotional that Ohio State game was for him, and understandably so. But for him to again, bounce back and play relatively well overall against Indiana, and then to make the play in the clutch, I thought was big. And then obviously, with that defense, I give them a pass because they have played at an elite level all year. And everybody's going to have a little bit of a downturn. But guess what? Again, when the game was on the line, they forced a 3-and-out. And I was down there on the field, Steve, with my daughter, Grace, who shoots for us. And after Keandre Lambert-Smith scored, I said, watch, the Penn State defense is going to force a turnover here because this is what Indiana does in these big games. And sure enough, it wasn't a turnover, but it, denied Dennis Sutton, caused a fumble that went out of the end zone. And I think the fact that people stepped up when it mattered, that was my overall takeaway. The negative, Steve, and I know I'm going on here, is the rushing game. I think we're 8 games in, and we can no longer say that, that it's some sort of aberration or something. I mean, this ground game, it kind of is what it is. And listen, I know that for a long time this season, Penn State was leading the Big Ten in rushing offense, but you have to remember a lot of that came against Delaware and UMass. And now you look, they're in the Big Ten, and to be unable to generate the kind of rushing game that I thought we all figured Penn State was going to be able to have, that to me is an alarm. That is something that I'm surprised they haven't been able to pull off. And, the one stat that really jumps out at me is, I think Katron Allen's fine because he is what he is, a power back who's going to blow through people and do what he does. But Nick Singleton, the inability of him to pop the big plays, and I don't think it's all on Nick. I think it's the offensive line. I think it's the tight ends and receivers blocking. But, you look in conference play only, and he's down to 3.6 yards per carry. And we're in a healthy sample size of the season to date. So all of that's kind of what jumped out at me from a negative perspective.
What then are you seeing in that part of it between the backs, the offensive line, the tight ends? What are you seeing there as to what may not be clicking?
I don't think the offensive line is playing with the nasty streak that a lot of us thought, especially when it comes to the running game. And I also think especially, I'm not good enough, and I'll just say this straight out, because I don't have the game tape, and I'm not able to look at things to know exactly how well the tight ends and receivers are blocking. But it just doesn't seem like it is, just based on production, it doesn't seem what it's been at the last couple of years. And then, we know how good Brenton Strange was in that regard.
Sure.
But also with Nick, it's just like, listen, he didn't become unexplosive overnight. And I just, I go back to the kick return in that game last week, and he kind of tripped over the kicker. And it's like, there's just something that's just not there. He's been this close on how many of those, but we've been saying that since the beginning of the year, right? So whether it's a kick return or whether it's a run where he just doesn't get around one guy. So I think it's a group effort. I mean, I know that's kind of a cop-out, but I think it would be unfair to lump it all on one area. I think if your running game isn't doing what it needs to do, I think you have to look at everybody. And I think more importantly, I think everybody has to take a look at themselves. And knowing Jaywan Sider and the way he coaches, I have a hell of a lot of respect for him. He has the bona fides. He's put the backs in the NFL. He knows what he's doing. So let's see if he can get this turned around in the last 4 games, because I think for Penn State to have an opportunity in the upcoming game, I know that Penn State has to take them one at a time, but I don't. And I know that there's a game on the horizon where they're going to need the rushing game to be better than it's been. And it's not this week. It's going to be in a couple weeks. And let's see if they can get it turned around.
What have you seen now through 8 starts in the development of Drew Aller?
I think going back to what we said before, coming out of that, well, first let me say one thing. The way that he's conducted himself with the media, and I know people may say, oh, who cares the way he conducts himself with the media? No, when you're a quarterback, that's an important thing. And he has come out after every game and not taking credit himself, talked about his teammates, said all the right things. That's important. And then he came out after that Ohio State game, Steve, and I'm guessing he didn't want to come out. Right. And he was emotional. He was emotional on the sideline, and he knew he was going to break down. And you know what? That kid sat up there and took our questions. And even when he was crying, I cannot tell you how much respect I have for him. That is what a leader does. Okay, you and I have covered Penn State football long enough, and we know that the vast majority of these guys, it's not when they win when they have to come out and show what they're all about after the game. It's after a loss. And the best leaders, the Jahan Dotsons, the Michael Robinsons, I'm just pulling names out. Don't think I'm leaving anybody out. But These are guys who really stood out to me that when it was absolutely the Sean Lees, I mean, when it was the most difficult time when they lost games, they came out and they faced the media. And I think that was big for Aller. With respect to where he is in his development as a quarterback, I don't think you can look past the fact that he has however many touchdowns it is now and one interception.
Right.
I mean, he has done what they have asked him to do, and that's not make the giant mistake outside of one. And if you were to tell me that through 8 games he was going to have one interception, so now I wonder if, again, he's gotten to this point. Now do they let him go a little bit? Now do they allow him to take a few more chances here and there? I'm not going to question what they've done in his development to this point because it's gotten to 7-1, and I don't know what he could have done different to win that Ohio State game. I think that was, again, a collective effort. So I think he's where he needs to be, and I'm looking forward to seeing in this last third of the season what Mike Yurcich and James Franklin allow him to do.
Obviously, there was one big mistake in the Indiana game defensively, and that, of course, was the miscommunication. Overall, what are you seeing with this defense that gives them a shot in every game?
Well, I think it's the depth, right? I mean, even though they haven't gone super deep the last couple of weeks, I mean, we've started to see, who Manny Diaz's go-to guys are. But I just think his creativity, Steve, knowing how good their DBs are and knowing what he can do in that prowler package and knowing how good his defensive ends are when Chop is there and how to utilize all 3 of them and going deeper on the at defensive tackle. I think they're much better defensive tackle this year than they were last year. I just think all of those things. I would think the thing that I'm kind of waiting for is for Abdul Carter to maybe have that breakout game. He's played well, and I think we have to be real careful when we start looking at stats with this defense because we know how little some of the starters played through the first half of the season. So, but having said that, I think we know what Abdul Carter's about in the ability to make splash plays and to go kind of sideline to sideline. And I almost think there have been times this year where it looks like he's been in cruise control, and I think he can amp it up another level. And I'm not trying to be critical of him because he's a young guy. He's only in his second year in the program, and, I think he would be the first to admit that he has a lot to learn, but he's got a really high ceiling. He has a really, really high ceiling. He's big, he's fast, he's aggressive, he's mean, he's tough. But I think he can flash just a little bit more. So that's one of the things that I'm looking at. But with Manny Diaz, I mean, his creativity and the way that he's able to use his depth, I've really been impressed by.
What have you seen in the special teams as the season's progressed?
Well, I think just I think you hit the midway point of the season, or I think more specifically the bye week, and you were really wondering about the special teams. And now all of a sudden, I mean, Stacey Collins, I don't know what they did during that bye week, but, the last couple of weeks they have really turned it around and just been, terrific. I mean, obviously Daquan Hardy, and I completely get what James Franklin's saying. It's like, why did it take this long to get him out there? Well, they've had some guys who have done a fairly good job, but, his ability has been unbelievable. I think Riley Thompson, I mean, he's just been terrific. I mean, he stepped up. His best game, in my view, was when they needed him the most, was in that Ohio State game. You get into a field position game, and that guy does it on the big stage. I mean, that was really impressive. And then Falcons. I mean, early in the season, you didn't know what you were going to get out of their place kicker unit, and they kind of struggled. And, would you prefer he makes 2 50-yarders? Great. But I think when you're kicking from that distance, he goes he makes big field goals out at Ohio State, and then he goes 1-2 from 50+ against Indiana. So you have to like that. So I think that was an area that was trending negatively until they got to the bye week. And give Stacey Collins a lot of credit. They kept grinding and kept getting after. And I think the other thing, Steve, I would say is their coverage teams, although that isn't really a surprise because I think we know how athletic this team is. And, the job that Gabe Wosu is able to do on kickoffs, just blasting them down there. The coverage teams hasn't been a surprise at all, but I think the way that the place kicker and punter have really stepped up the last couple of weeks, and that's going to be important as the season winds down. That was an area where I thought that was a negative for them, again, going into the bye, and I think it's turned into a positive pretty quickly.
Your viewpoint on the game with Maryland this weekend?
Yeah, it's the one team outside of Ohio State that I think has the sort of athleticism at the skill positions that could give Penn State trouble.
Mm-hmm.
But I also know that Tagovailoa is the quarterback. You would know the numbers better than I do, but I think Penn State sacked him 10 times in the last 2 games.
Mm-hmm.
And I think if you're able to get to him, they're going to have trouble scoring enough points. And I look at a Maryland team that just gave up, 30+ to Northwestern. 33 to Northwestern. So whatever we've been seeing out of the Penn State offense, hey, typically when they're not playing Ohio State, they've been able to put up 30 points. And I see Penn State scoring, right in that 30 area, and I'm not sure that I see Maryland being able to put up that many points. It's really weird what happens to this team at the end of October and into early November. But that's an instance where, they go out to Ohio State, are looking really good, and then get ultimately blown out in the third and fourth quarter. And then you lose at home to Illinois and you lose on the road to Northwestern. We've seen both of those teams. We saw what Penn State was able to do against both of those teams. And I just wonder that even with the athletic ability there, we've seen this team come apart in November, and it looks like it's happening again. So I think Penn State's going to be in pretty good shape this week.
Mark, very quickly, basketball, I know it starts on Monday. Any quick thoughts on that before Penn State gets rolling?
Yeah, people, just be ready for Ace Baldwin. I was not out at that game, but just seeing him and the little we've seen him in practice and that game at Rock, this guy, he is like unflappable. He is just, he's not going to beat you with 3-point shots, but I was watching the one drill in practice, Stephen. I'm sure you've been there more than I have, but they have the guards going up, driving on the big men, and he is just like completely unfazed. He goes into traffic and can use his body, and he's so cool and calm and collected. And the other thing I would say is that I think I'm anxious to see how this all comes together, but really impressed by their overall length. And that's just not the big guys. That's Kern. They just have Dunn. They have guys who have like longer arms and kind of spidery, and I mean that in a positive way. Yeah. So I'm anxious to see what they do. I think they're going to be more athletic, obviously, than we've seen. But the key is going to be with all those disparate parts that they're bringing from different areas. How do you bring them together? And again, that's where I think Ace is going to be a key, because he's kind of, he played under Mike Rhodes, obviously, for people who don't know, at VCU, Big Ten or A-10 Player of the Year. He's able to be kind of that conduit from the coaching staff and Nick Kern as well. And so I think that's going to be really help. But I'm just telling people that when you get a chance, Ace Baldwin is fun to watch on both ends of the floor. Just a cool customer, and he's going to be a really nice player for him this year.
Yeah, both ends. You're absolutely right. Got that nice lefty jumper, too. So, hey, Mark, thanks so much. Always appreciate the time you give us.
I appreciate it, too, Steve. Always have fun talking football and hoops with you. Thank you.
John, welcome back to the show. It's great to have you with us.
Steve, thanks for having me. Excited to be on with you.
All right, so let's start with the exhibition game. That's one thing basketball has that football does not, and that is the ability to go out and find out a couple of things early. How important was it for you to get as many guys into the game as possible and in combination so it gave you a better read of your team?
Well, first of all, the exhibition from a game planning and learning from a basketball standpoint perspective is very important. But the whole mission of the event was to highlight ALS, in particular, a member of Bucknell basketball's program. Pat Behan is his name.
Yep.
Graduated in 2010. He's 34 years old. He's got ALS. And so the NCAA giving opportunity to raise money, raise awareness in an exhibition-style setting is really great. And so that was the core of why we did it. Now, from a basketball standpoint, I mean, for my first time, our staff's first time in a competitive setting with referees and, you know, a DJ and an opponent that's ready to roll and has much more experience together than we do, it's you know, priceless, for lack of a better word. So getting everybody in the game, getting them, I guess, as much as possible comfortable with what we're doing schematically on the offense and defensive side of the game was really important for us. And doing something collectively, competitively, you know, that was probably the most important thing.
Yeah.
Because we've been competing against one another for the last, let's just say, 2 months.
Right. And and again, Dan Egelstadt obviously was a part of this as well.
Yeah, Dan was great. I mean, great.
Yeah, and it should be pointed out for Penn State fans, of course, know Tim Shaw, who played with the Tennessee Titans. He's battling at ALS. Steve Smith, who was on the national championships team in '86, passed away ALS. So Penn State fans are as aware of anybody of what ALS means, and so being strong. How about that? We'll go from there.
Being strong, yeah. Thank you, Steve. Yeah, it's a disease. Truthfully, I didn't know much about, and having learned so much now in the last 18 months. It's a terrible, debilitating disease. So I feel for everyone that is family members going through it, and the least I can do is help Pat fight it financially and bring awareness to the devastation that it causes.
So I hope everybody keeps that in mind. However anybody can help, please. It can make a difference.
Thank you.
And when it gets now to the basketball part of it, what do you think of Elvin Edmonds and what he was able to do for you in the game, getting 16?
Yeah, Elvin did well. I mean, like I said, this was a great opportunity for us to compete against somebody else, all 14 members of our team, one mission, one goal, one plan, and to see our players execute, come together during a very competitive basketball game and almost come out on the other side was just exciting for us as a staff. Elvin's been here. This is now his junior year. He's been here 3 years, well, 2 3/4. And we're going to rely on his experience. We have a few players that were on the roster last year that played some good minutes throughout the course of their career. And we're going to rely on their experience. But at the same time, we're a new staff, new energy, and we have a new coaching style. So everyone's kind of in their freshman year.
Right, exactly. And then when you sit there and you look at the three-point percentage as an example, something like this, were you getting a quality of shot that you like the quality of shot and that wasn't forced? It's just sometimes it just doesn't go, because that's always a possibility.
I mean, Steve, there's probably very few times in the amount of basketball that you've seen that you would look at a box score and see 1 for 26. So, look, at the end of the day, the game comes down to makes and misses. Yep. And we certainly check the misses box, okay?
Right.
But from a shot quality standpoint, I mean, when you go back as a coach and you're trying to learn, again, you really, in this situation, you want to take something that you can then fall back on throughout the course of the week leading up to our first game. I learned that we were able to do a good job of finding opportunities for the right players to take high-quality three-pointers. They just literally didn't go in. At the same time, there's another part of it that you take from it competitively is you don't have to make shots to win a basketball game.
Yeah.
And, for this particular group at this time, it was I'm going to say just really impactful for our program and this team to learn that you don't have to make shots to ultimately have an opportunity to win the game. And to get that experience this early will prove to be very critical in the next couple months here.
I mean, and that's why I asked the question the way I asked it, John, because you can drop the best stuff on the face of the earth, get the ball to exactly the right guy, and on this particular day, no matter what, it doesn't go in. But the play and the guy were both the right play and the right guy.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I mean that's your goal. I think as the head coach, when you leave a game, you want to feel good about a couple statistics. I think rebounding is a major statistic. Turnovers is a major statistic. Free throw attempts is a major statistic. And then, yeah, of course, field goal percentage defense and field goal percentage offense. And we hit some statistical boxes that are really important. Offensive rebounds, for example, we had 19, and we forced 21 turnovers. And ultimately, due to those two statistics just mentioned, it gave us a chance to win the game. And like I said, it's invaluable for this particular team at this time to get that experience. So that's why the NCAA granting these opportunities. Ultimately, I think this will become part of the norm for college basketball going forward. And we're using it. We were able to use it for a couple different reasons, and it's going to benefit us.
And I want to talk about the turnover part for a moment. You forced 21. The part you didn't mention is you only had 10, and 6 of them were in regulation. There were 4 that were in the overtimes along the way. So did you like the way you took care of the basketball and gave yourself shots instead of having empty possessions without a shot?
Absolutely. Absolutely. We've really focused on valuing every possession for the last 2 weeks. And I'm really proud of the carryover from the locker room to the game, because with a new staff and new terminology, it leads to confusion and lack of confidence at times. And I'm just really happy that this particular group is grabbing on to what I think are the important pillars for winning. Look, we look like a Mike Rhodes team out there, 21 turnovers, the havoc of Happy Valley.
Yeah,
I don't know if that's his phrase or not, but
can I steal that?
The fact that we valued it.
Can I steal that?
A havoc might be something that VCU still has.
Yeah.
Legally, I'm not sure if it travels.
Yeah, I don't know. We'll have to find out. It may be copyrighted. Maybe I'll just do it my own way.
Yeah, that's right.
I'll come up with something. How about the way there's certain things you can work in practice on an end of half, end of game, end of regulation, end of overtime type of play. Now you get to do it in a practical application, situational basketball. First time through, did you like the way you were handling situational basketball?
Yeah, I felt like our overall, from staff to players to managers, trainers, etc., I thought we handled it with great poise. That's the first step in a environment of a moment of chaos. Is everyone connected?
Yeah.
All it takes is one break in communication for you to lose a game. A one-possession game moment, 5 seconds. We did everything we needed to do. And, honestly, I credit that to Billy Lang, who I just spent the last 4 years with. We were very diligent. We worked tirelessly on special team situations. That's one of the things that we've really dialed in on as a staff. And the last 20 seconds of regulation, you are not able to replicate that in practice. It's impossible to replicate the game-like emotions in general, but the stress levels, the volume, the scoreboard, the referees, and we executed it as well as we could, which was my hope leading into this upcoming week. And we gave ourselves a chance to win. And that was all I could ask for.
How'd you feel about Noah Williamson and how he was able to play?
Yeah, I'm thrilled. I'm excited for the future for Noah. During my time at Bucknell, both as coach and as player, I've been around some really high-level big men. And from a skill standpoint, I categorically put Noah in this world of a potential high-level Bucknell big man that historically you see in Lewisburg. And he didn't really get a ton of opportunity last year because of the roster makeup and the players that were ahead of him, but he's super skilled. And he's worked very hard on improving his body. And I'm excited for him. I really am. I think he grounds us offensively, and he gives us an opportunity to score near the rim.
Last year, a guy like Jack Forrest missed the first part of the season, and then when he got back, he was an impact player. Can he be an impact player for you?
He can. He can. I'm very familiar with Jack's strengths versus weaknesses. I've been around Jack for, at this point now, half of his college basketball career in a couple of different settings. But Jack is a big physical guard, and he's a highly capable scorer that we're just going to have to move around in a half-court setting so that we can maybe find opportunities for him to get easier baskets. I think he'll be the focal point of everyone's scouting report based off of the data. And we have to do a good job as a team and getting him opportunities. I think our players, and again, I'm just really proud of the mentality right now of our group. I think our players recognize that he has capabilities in the scoring world, and they're often trying to find ways to help him. And so that'll be really important for Jack and ultimately his production. But he's aggressive. He knows we need him to be aggressive, and he's got the experience that I think he can do it. Can he be consistent for a full season, health-wise and production-wise?
Yeah, I mean, because between Columbia, St. Joe's, before he gets there, he's got a lot of experience, which you know all about. But for you, what's it been like trying to bring a team together from various backgrounds where you're familiar with some but not all when you take the job?
Yeah, it's been fun. It's been a lot of fun. I'm learning something new every day as it relates to leadership or as it relates to how each individual on our team learns the game. But the message has been pretty simple, Steve. I'm focusing on the process. I even have given them the definition of the word process. Mm-hmm. It's a series of events that leads to an ending. Oftentimes in sports, that ending of the process is success, but that's what's always brought to light. But it happens when the process leads to failure as well. So we're trying to be the best version of ourselves. I do not know what that final result will be. Mm-hmm. And we don't look weeks in advance. We learn from the past, and that's right now the program mentality. And it starts for me every day. Like I said, I'm just trying to make sure that our group is prepared as best they can be for a 40-minute, high-intensity, very physical college basketball game.
Well, I mean, it's easy for you to talk to me about process because you know I'm around it all the time. So I get exactly where you're coming from on a couple different sports. Delaware will be the opener next Monday. That's your next focus. That is going to be at Soika at 7 o'clock next Monday. So we're going to wish you the best on that because I know you guys are starting the prep on that, and we're not going to get too deep into the weeds on that yet because you're just starting on it. But, John, thanks a lot for your time.
Steve, this is great.
Yep.
Appreciate it.
Same here, John. We appreciate you. Good luck.
All right. Thanks, Steve.